I am conscious that in recent videos I've been talking a lot about individuals, high-profile individuals who are visibly present or conducting negotiations. And that's quite normal, that happens. Everything to do with negotiation, whenever it's taught or spoken about, will usually focus on the human element because that is the interesting part, that is the stuff that is most visible. But of course, in reality, any negotiation, particularly really big ones, actually have a lot happening behind the scenes. There's a lot that goes into it. So really, any big negotiation is actually about teamwork. So a good analogy to use here is to think of any band, any sort of pop or rock band. Of course, you've got the front man, the front woman, and that's perhaps is the individual that people talk about that they notice the most. But of course, behind them is the band playing the music. Someone in there is the organizer. Somewhere in there is whoever's written the lyrics to the music or composed the music itself. So there'll be managers, etc., etc. So even though people may relate to the front man or woman and remember them and obviously talk about them the most, of course the band is critical to the success of that individual as well as the band. And negotiations are exactly the same. To carry on that theme, you of course have got talented musicians who do all of it themselves. They're solo artists. And the point to make here is that all those roles, all the things that have to happen for the band, for example, writing the lyrics, composing the music, getting yourself organised, collecting the money, whatever, that still has to be done, but it is all now being done by the individual, not a band. And again, like any negotiation, it's exactly the same. You may be a solo negotiator, but there's several different things you have to do to make a negotiation successful. So in this session, I'm going to talk about all those individual skills so that for anyone who's operating individually, you understand that that is what you're doing. And for anyone who's doing a big negotiation where you're operating as a team or creating a team, you understand what kind of individuals, what kind of skills you require to make that negotiation team successful. So let's start with the organizer. And many people never think about this, the organization skills. But this is actually crucial in several ways. The first one is what I'm calling procedural and stakeholder management. For any big negotiation, there's a lot of information that flows through. There's a lot of people involved, at the negotiations and behind the scenes. All of that has to be managed and coordinated. People have to turn up to the right meetings at the right time, things like that. People have to understand where you're at. Maybe there has to be a plan. So you do require individuals who understand how to do that effectively. Because really this is pretty much like any kind of big project management scenario. You've got to manage lots of different concurrent activities to make sure that everything moves forward at speed, at the correct time, and people know what they're doing. This also includes making sure the right people, and it's very easy for people to forget or not involve the correct person at the correct time. And that causes a whole host of problems for big negotiations. It will lead to all sorts of mistakes. So having a designated individual that is in charge of making sure that those mistakes don't happen is quite crucial for a successful negotiation team. So on the back of that, with the second point, document management, or even configuration control, configuration management as otherwise known. When you're negotiating big agreements or technical areas, then there's all sorts of changes that happen quite often. There's a lot of reviewing that goes on. So if you've got multiple numbers of people reviewing the same document, you need a coordinator that will take all those comments, all those inputs, and consolidate that into one master document, and then to send that new version out to for everyone else, to review or to go to the other side for comment and so on. This is not particularly sexy stuff, but this is crucial. This is the glue to making a negotiation work successfully. And people will quite often lose track or comment on wrong document, or basically create inefficiency and chaos in the system if you do not have this bit done properly. So for the big complicated negotiation, this is absolutely essential as well. Everyone has to know which version of the document they're working on and commenting on, and what changes have been made and what arguments have been made. And the final element of this skill set is events management. And again, this is something perhaps people don't think too much about, but it can be extremely influential in your negotiation. So what I mean by events management is that you're always traveling to a negotiation. Someone will usually be traveling to the other person's office or country, or to a mutually agreed, meeting ground type thing, place, conference center, whatever it is. And if you're the host of that negotiation, you have a lot of control. You have a lot of ability to influence how that negotiation will go. And you want to influence that negotiation in all sorts of positive ways to make it easier and more likely for you to get what you want, to be successful in negotiation. And a very subtle way of doing that is by making people impressed and comfortable with how you have organized everything outside of the meeting room, as well as inside the meeting room. So the sort of things you might consider if you're hosting and you've organized stuff, that maybe you organize a car to pick the other negotiators up from the airport or the hotel, so that they don't get lost, so they don't have to get stressed and figuring out how to get to where you are. It's a silly little thing, but it's always greatly appreciated. And then you want to get those individuals through your organization doors. There may be security, so you want to make sure that process is seamless and smooth. You want to have a good welcome. You want to have a good room, a well-organized room that has everything you need in terms of equipment and chairs and whatever, coffee, biscuits, anything like that. And the whole point of this successful event management theme is that you're making the other side feel comfortable, feel welcome. It doesn't matter how difficult the negotiations are going to be. I always advise people to put attention to detail in terms of managing the event, because it's a subtle thing, but it can be highly influential in making the other side view you as professional, as courteous, as someone they want to do business with. And if they have that perspective, then they're more likely to want to engage positively with you at the actual negotiation itself. Final point on this theme is it certainly doesn't hurt to have, if you have multi-day negotiations, to have dinner in the evening at a nice restaurant or something like that. You don't necessarily have to pay for it. You can agree that everyone pays for their own, or your organization can pay for it. But what it is very good for building relationships in the evening. And it is very common for the first day of negotiation to be quite slow, successful perhaps, but slow. But the second day, or third days after you've broken the ice a little bit, after you've had a nice dinner and got to know each other a bit, the second day can go much faster, much smoother. So that is one of the subtle ways in which you can influence the other side to improve your negotiation position, through being well organized, attention to every single bit of detail, and managing everything about your negotiation, whether that's to do with documents, whether it's to attend a meeting, whether it's getting people organized. All of that is critical. Another role is the analyst. Now these will be individuals that will have a certain level of knowledge, high competency. They will be the sort of people that will do a lot of the assessing of the technical detail. They might even do a lot of the writing. For example, if you're writing big, complicated documents. The whole point, they're there to provide critical thinking. Now, these individuals are there essentially to help you be well prepared for any negotiation. That is, thinking through all the issues, understanding the complexities on any particular matter, and also understanding strengths and weaknesses. The second bit there. Because you need to know your own strengths and weaknesses, and you want to know the strengths and weaknesses of the position of the other side. So there's a lot of analysis work that has to go into doing that, into finding that sort of information out. So you want people in this analytical role who are able to think through all this stuff, go out there, get evidence. And that is what they do. They gather the evidence and they inform your negotiation. This is again something people perhaps don't think too consciously about, but as anyone would experience a big negotiation will know, your negotiation can be won or lost in the preparation stage. And preparation stage is all about good stakeholder management, good analysis. So this role is key. And of course, this role will also analyze what comes out from the other side. So you may have had your negotiation meeting, you may reach agreement on various matters at that meeting, but then you will come back with what it is you have agreed. Your analyst, in a less pressured environment, will review what it is you've agreed and check that it makes sense, that actually it is coherent and you haven't accidentally created some other problem for yourself, something that you didn't realize at the meeting, because you can't think of everything at a meeting. So having people that will analyze everything you come out with afterwards is a critical element of the due diligence process that supports all negotiations. Now we come to the bit that most people will always talk about in any negotiation, that is being the communicator. That is the high profile role, a bit like the band frontman, frontwoman. And so this will be the individual that will be engaging with everyone, communicating position, communicating the dilemmas, the things that need to be done, the problems that need to be solved. And they will have the ability to phrase things in a way that other people can understand, relate to, and want to tackle. And I deliberately said internal and external, because communication at any negotiation will more often than not be about 80% to 90% internal and about 10 to 20% external. Both are crucial to a successful negotiation. So never underestimate the fact that you have to communicate very extensively with your own side before you actually sit down to negotiate. So the communicator role will also be able to apply judgment and respond effectively. Now, if you are exchanging documents via email, for example, that is reasonably easy to do. But when you are in the hot seat, as it were, sitting at the negotiation table, you've got to react immediately to whatever is said by the other side. And that's not always easy, particularly for anything that's complicated. And it's very hard to improvise on the spot. You have to apply a lot of experience, a lot of judgment to be very successful. There's quite a bit you can do to prevent putting yourself in that position. This is why we talk about good preparation being critical. But ultimately, you cannot guarantee you'll think of everything, and you will quite often be surprised, or the other side will say something that you hadn't realized they would say or hadn't prepared for. So you need to be able to, your communicator needs to be able to respond to that effectively. And by effectively, I don't mean you always have to have the answer, but they have to have the ability to apply the judgment in saying that they do have an answer, they do know what their position is, or that actually they don't have an answer, they don't have a prepared position, particularly if the other side have sprung that on them, and that therefore they will go away and consult with an expert on that matter and come back with a considered and coherent position or response. That is an appropriate response. And where people will quite often get into trouble is trying to immediately think of a good answer, but actually all they're doing is bluffing from a point of weakness. So good communication is not about having the answer to everything, it's about responding appropriately. So they have to set the tone, and I talk about this a lot in negotiation. And I suppose what I mean by setting the tone is all about professionalism. It's all about being courteous. It's all about looking like someone who really understands what they are doing and able to tackle any issue, no matter how difficult, how complicated, or even if they're not particularly well prepared for it, but able to respond appropriately and courteously, and to have the other side comfortable with how the conversation is going, even if it's difficult, even if they're not getting necessarily the immediate answers that they want. So what good communicators will also do is set the pace and the direction of the negotiation. They'll be able to speed things up a little bit when they think it's appropriate, slow things down. Sometimes that is necessary. They will also find ways of making sure the negotiation goes in the direction that they want it to. It's very easy during negotiation to go off on tangents. So the good communicators will have a plan, and they will have the communication skills to persuade the other side by direct and more subtle means to follow their plan, really. So there's a bit of a joke about negotiation and diplomacy. That is, it is all about letting the other side have it your way. And that's kind of what I mean here when I say setting the direction of negotiation. So ultimately, this role, and it is a pivotal role, is about influencing. Influencing the negotiations at the preparation stage, influencing the stakeholders, influencing the other side, and everyone in between, essentially. We also have the observer role. And again, this is something people don't always think of. They might think of the communicator, but they don't always think of the observer. And the observer can be a very powerful role that can really help the communicator role be more effective. So this is particularly the case if you're working as a team, because it's very hard during negotiation to watch everyone on the other side, especially if there's several people. And of course, you should be listening as well as communicating. But it's hard to take notes when everyone's talking, when other people are talking, and when you're talking. It's also hard to see everything. So when you're in a negotiation, you should always focus on the person who is speaking. That is the position, the proposal being communicated to you at that point in time. You will not, for example, necessarily pick up on a byplay by other people not talking. So, for example, other people might look at each other and say, I don't agree, visually say, not verbally say, I don't agree with the position, or I'm not comfortable. So the communicator role, or the lead negotiator, might not pick that up. So that is the role of the observer. The observer does observe not only who's talking, but also who's not talking, and will feed that back to the lead negotiator, or whoever is talking, at the appropriate time. So they will pick up on the subcontext, or the deeper things that are going on. And if you know that the other side are not in agreement or not comfortable with something, then you can develop strategies to exploit that or to address that. But it's very hard to do that yourself as an individual. You can't do everything all at once. So having an observer or a wingman to support you is very helpful, especially for big and complicated negotiation. And you might as well formalize this role rather than just making it ad hoc. Have a game plan before you go to the negotiation, and have the understanding that team members will be observers, and that during the break they will be able to come to you and provide internal criticism. So look, I think we didn't quite get that right. I saw their reaction and it wasn't positive. Anything like that they can do, during the break or as an aside, because you've got to have that attitude or being willing to critically analyze your own performance as well as anything that the other side are doing. And again, the observer is really helpful for doing that to help you, because it's not perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect negotiation. You can't get it right all the time. It's all about applying judgment, all about responding to events and what people are saying, which is very difficult to do, very challenging. But having two eyes is always better than one, as they say. And having someone else that will support you and that you trust and can take criticism constructively will really help you improve, will really make you an effective negotiator. So we'll talk a little bit about some other roles as well. And it will usually be some form of specialist. Now, this specialist will be a deep expert in their field, recognized as such. They could be the lawyer or the engineer or the finance person, whatever it may be. Now, nothing says that the specialist cannot be any of the previous roles that I just discussed. So you can have one individual doing more than one role. But you always want to recognize when you've got a particular specialist, when they're there to influence on a particular complicated issue, because they are the expert in that area. So what they will do is they will help in the preparation. They will do the analysis to make sure that you don't propose something that is ludicrous, basically. So they would support the analysis work using their knowledge on those particular issues. They may support you at the negotiation meetings. Not always. Sometimes they don't need to be at the meetings, sometimes they do. But if they are going to come to the meeting, then you almost need to make sure of several things. One is that they're able to communicate effectively, because let's be honest, if they're a specialist, they may not be necessarily natural communicators. They're specialists in something. They don't have to be in communication. But that's not a bad thing. In fact, someone who's not who's not a natural communicator can actually come across at a negotiation as more authentic. And authenticity is a wonderful thing to use. Really can help. So what you're using the specialist credibility in that area as a negotiation asset. So you want them to communicate effectively and to be able to get their point across and not to scupper the negotiation, not to do any bad behavior, not to reduce the tone, anything like that. And you can give them a bit of training and so on to do that. But ultimately, you're bringing them there because you're using their credibility to help influence your negotiation position. And you have to think about the timing of when you do that. So do you need them there at the beginning of your negotiation all the way throughout? Or do you want to bring them in when things get difficult? And this is when I talk about the strategic unblocker role. So the strategic unblockers are the people you bring in to fix a problem, to resolve a complicated issue during a negotiation. Now, one of the secrets to deploying an effective strategic unblocker is you don't bring them in too early, you don't use them too much. So their value lies in being a little bit scarce, as it were. So they can be behind the scenes, helping you negotiate, helping inform your position. But when things get difficult, you bring them in to the front, to the limelight, if you like, to the spotlight. The act of bringing them to the negotiation itself is a form of escalation. You are telling the other side, right, I want to get this problem fixed. I brought the big guns out now. I brought this unblocker here. The individual with all their knowledge, with all their credibility to help resolve this problem. It's a strong statement. And it works if you use it sparingly. Use it too often and you reduce its impact. So it's worth bearing this in mind with certain specialists. that sometimes you want to use them in this way, use their credibility to influence your negotiation at the right time. You'll also, and the final role, is that they will often need to approve the complicated specialist element of your agreement. So, for example, if you've got an engineer, that engineer will approve the agreed tech standards as saying, yes, we can deliver that. You haven't gone and negotiated something that is, physically impossible to actually deliver. Similar in a legal sense, you may have a lawyer who's the specialist, but they will also make sure that what is agreed is compliant with the law and doesn't undermine you in any particular way further down the line. And then we come to the final role. And again, this is something that people don't necessarily appreciate, this particular role in any negotiation. This is the approver. These individuals are quite often the senior individuals, the senior managers, the bosses, the CEO, whoever. And they're the top of the pecking order, if you like. And they have a role in negotiations as well. And one of my frustrations is that they sometimes don't understand that role. And if they don't fulfill that role and support the negotiation constructively, then they can accidentally end up being quite disruptive or quite undermining to the negotiation team. So they kind of need to understand that as well. The responsibility of the negotiation team to keep the approver happy, to let the approver know what it is they need to do and when they need to do it. So, to fulfill this role, the approver will set the direction, the overall objectives, and the top level envelope for the negotiation. So what I mean by that is if you're delivering a particular program that's got a particular budget, must be achieved by a certain deadline, then that is what this individual does. It sets that. And there needs to be a two-way communication because those deadlines, those objectives, need to be realistic. And one of the things that can fatally undermine a negotiation team is that if they have to operate to unrealistic timelines. And you can see that in a very high profile way with all the free trade agreements being negotiated by the UK government. Those negotiation teams are being given hopelessly unrealistic timelines and objectives, which they're trying very hard to meet. But what this represents is an exceedingly bad behaviour by their leadership, because that undermines their ability to be successful negotiators by doing that. So you have to have two-way communication where the approver sets you good, achievable objectives and trust the negotiation team or individuals to get on with it. So their role is that they will perhaps set things in motion. So you may have your opening meeting with the other side, and they may be there to put the seal of approval, if you like, on things, to introduce everyone, to say, this is my negotiation team, this is my lead negotiator. From now on, they speak essentially with my voice. That is it. So you set the scene, if you like. And if they're really good and personable, they can set the tone as well. Set a really good tone, hand it over to the negotiation team, and then walk away and let those individuals get on with it. That is their role. Really, that's how they should be there. They shouldn't be there all the way through. This is another common mistake. Senior people may feel the need to micromanage a negotiation. And if you are a trained negotiator, and if that is appropriate, then that's fine. But quite often it is not. Quite often you shouldn't. Those individuals should not be there. Because there's a bit of a golden rule here. The more senior the negotiations, the slower the negotiations. And with all the best will and intent in the world, that is always what happens for a variety of reasons. So what the approver really needs to do is stay in the background as much as possible. So they need to have a trusting relationship with the lead negotiator or negotiation team who will agree compromises, for example, and trade-offs. And they can come back and say, I've had to agree this for this reason, this is why. And get that agreed by the approver. keep them informed all the way through. You saw during the Brexit negotiation Barnier do that all the way through. His approval, or his approvers, were the EU Parliament, the EU Commission, and he did this. It was a lot of work, but you could see in a very high profile way, every time he had to reach a compromise or agreement with the UK side, he went back, he explained it to them, he got approval to proceed to the next stage. So all negotiation, really, to run well, should have this relationship with their approvers. So those approvers themselves don't actually participate in negotiations unless absolutely necessary. And when that becomes necessary, it's coming back to the theme of the strategic unblocker role. You can have a really big, thorny issue. You've resolved everything else. You've got one or two big things that you're struggling to make headway for. You escalate. And the same as I was talking about with the specialist, you escalate in a way to maximize their impact and to use their credibility as the senior individuals to demonstrate their commitment, their intent to resolve the problem. So they're there to strategic unblock, and the approver can have this role. And also, like with any strategic unblocker role, you use it sparingly. You use it when you need to. You don't overuse it right from the very beginning because that reduces its impact. And of course, the final element for the approver is to sign the agreement. They may be signing off in the sense of agreeing it can be signed. They may actually be signing it themselves. So they may be the ultimate individual accountable for that agreement. So I've covered several roles here, and these you get all this in any good negotiation team. With the possible exception of the approver, all the other roles can be done by an individual, for example. So you can have one individual doing all the other roles except for the approver. Or you can have one individual in a team doing two of the roles, another one doing a single role, another one doing three roles, whatever. You pick with what is appropriate for the individuals, for the requirements of that negotiation. But what is always important to remember is that whatever negotiation you go into, all these roles should be there. So you should understand that, plan for it, and make sure that you recruit or manage the people appropriately and that they understand their role in support of any negotiation. And you will find that any successful negotiation process will do all of this, will have all these roles, and will have successfully got the individuals to play their part. Hope that was helpful. Please do leave any comments or suggestions, or even any questions that you may have. I'll be happy to answer them.